Hello, Josh. Welcome to the Wellness Lab podcast. Happy to have you here to learn more about your background, your experience, anything around innovation, how it impacts wellness. And we'll see as well what's the overall um, things that Inflect Health has to provide to the audience to learn more about innovation, how they can improve their wellness, health. And over to you to give a quick intro and let us know anything that might be relevant to learn from you.
Oh, thank you. Well, and thank you very much for having me. So I'm Josh Tamayo-Sarver, and I like to think I'm exceptional because I have multidimensional mediocrity, which is to say that I am a suit, scrub, geek, and quant. A suit because I've been managing healthcare and healthcare operations for almost 20 years now. Scrub because I'm an emergency physician. I still practice. I still do 3 night shifts each month, so I get to eat my own cooking and feel what it's really like to truly be at the bedside and take care of someone's life. Geek because I was a software engineer in a previous life and know what it's like to be in a stand-up and do all the features and have something and say, hey, feature complete. And then the customer's like, that's not what I wanted. You're like, oh, I delivered exactly what you said the features were. And yet that's the way it goes. So I know what that feels like. And then quant because I have a PhD in statistics in the models that now became some of what are the foundational models for AI. So I have a reasonably good understanding of that. And I say it's mediocrity because in any one of those domains, I think I'm reasonably competent, but there are people who are really, truly exceptional at any one of those things far better than I am. But there aren't very many people who do all four. So there you have it.
I love how humble you are, and it's nice you have these different components and how you live things in a different way. The perspective you might have, the insights, and the overall view you can provide sounds like it can also be really helpful and relevant for, let's say, patients and other persons that might have certain health implications. But then, there's some innovations around technology in place that will be helpful too. So I totally find that will be a win. As you mentioned, can only maybe cover as much as you can. You have certain time in the day. You have obviously a human life, so you have to rest and so. But it totally goes hand in hand with what you've learned, what you've done so far throughout your career, and it's so interesting to learn like what are the key things you have been able to find or experiences you've had throughout time. If you want to deep dive in some specific cases or stories, like in any of those four areas that you mentioned, please feel free. And then we'll go more into that specific portion of the innovation side of things and discuss more on Inflect Health.
Yeah, so I think wellness is actually a really great topic for how having all four of those perspectives can help quite a bit. And we can dive into AI and AI and wellness, and especially when we talk about AI, generative AI. And with those perspectives, I can see a problem and I don't know the solution. So that's always a fun thing to talk about, which is if you think about social media. And social media, we all know that people get hooked because of the dopamine from the likes and such that you get on social media, and that hooks into your dopamine response system. Well, evolutionarily, you can think that that whole dopamine response for when you got positive social feedback on something was important to get people to act in socially appropriate ways and create social cohesion of a group. And now technology has kind of hacked that response with our social media, and we can probably agree that that's not really all that great for wellness, and it's probably created more problems than we would like. But it's a technology hacking millions of years of a biological social development in us, right? Do you follow me?
Yes. Yeah, totally. I
Yeah.
find like social media, it's maybe an sword with two edges. There's lots of
Yeah.
great things that you can accomplish, and it's mostly probably from that marketing side
Mm-hmm.
and branding awareness, but also from a user standpoint, as you mentioned, like the dopamine it creates, and then we are just mm, stuck to the phones and looking at what's coming and happening and trying to be in the know, having the FOMO, right, of missing
Yeah.
out things, and it's lots of information, which is, I guess, bad in a way for us as human brains and beings, that then you have all other trickle effects within the health that might not be the best. So
Yeah, and when you were like in the town square and in the village, having that dopamine and that social connection was important to keep you coming back to the town square and the village. But now that it's actually pulling you to your phone and away from your real life social interactions, I think there's a danger to it. So if we now think about putting that on steroids and really pumping it up, we have generative AI. And when you ask ChatGPT a question and it gives you that emotionally resonant response, right? Where ChatGPT or Perplexity, it doesn't matter which system you're using, you talk to it and it responds like your friend and makes you feel understood and is very empathetic. And that makes us feel a sense of affiliation and like we've been seen. But what's on the other side of that being seen is math, right? There is no emotion that the computer is having. There's actually no even understanding of what you said, right? It's just putting together the probabilities of what you said with a response that you would probabilistically respond well to. And so it truly is just telling you what you want to hear. And it's doing it in a way that feels very emotionally resonant. So it's hijacking that same system that told you who was friend and foe for the past 2 million years, except it's doing it in a way that technology is now taking care of that.
yes.
And does that mean over time, as we learn, just like getting likes on Facebook does not mean that that's a friend that likes us. It means they're responding to a social media post and it doesn't have a whole lot of weight. Will also mean that when we get a compliment from our spouse, we don't pay attention to that anymore either, because we've learned not to pay attention to positive feedback. Does that mean we learn not to pay attention to someone who is emotionally aligning with us the way ChatGPT does? So is that a danger that we're going to run into from a wellness perspective with artificial intelligence? I don't know the answer to that, but it seems like it should be a pretty big concern.
Yeah, I think that's a valid hypothesis out there. So interesting all of those comments you have, because as far as I've seen and experienced, the other day I was talking to someone close to me and he's like, okay, what plan are you gonna implement for, let's say, fasting? And he's like, okay, I did my ChatGPT research and this is the specific things I got, so I'm gonna do my fasting and I'm just gonna keep it up and do it this way. But I started questioning a lot, like, why, how do you know it's the thing you have to apply for your specific case and where you're at? For many things that connect and makes him like a human being, and obviously he's just doing, as you mentioned, like like a quick research or quick points, like this is happening or I want to achieve this. But I find the complexities and certain things need to be considered, and really having that mindful practice or having specific guidelines, restraints to put in way, will help gear how we use the technology AI. As you mentioned too, the way I've seen, like in the last couple of years, how we interact, even like through social media or apps, let's say for communication, it's really easy for us to engage in a way with others. And then when you see others in person, there's not that connection, or it's hard to interact, or you're in the same place and everyone is like on their phones instead of
Yeah,
chatting or talking. So it's kind of strange how things have been changing. We can say also like polarization of how things politically happen or the communication goes, and we're bombarded, inundated with things, but sometimes knowing what's true, what's relevant or not. There's lots of ways or challenges we're facing right now. So I guess interesting for you to probably learn, adapt, and put it into practice on how you've been seeing things from the various angles you have, and probably thinking, are there any solutions you think will be helpful at some point in time, or way to manage those specific challenges that we will face sooner rather than later?
that's a good question. I don't know that I have a great answer. So I feel like a lot of what we've been able to accomplish with technology, and I work at Inflect Health, and with Inflect Health, We have done a lot of our own products where we go from idea to launching it in the healthcare and in wellness space. And we also are a one-stop shop for international companies that are trying to bring their products into the US, and we can shorten that time from them coming into the US to scaling because we know how to navigate it so well. And we're part of Vituity. Vituity has 7,000 clinicians, including our own wellness brand called Move. And we have outpatient clinics, and it's fun. We do a lot of great, cool stuff. So it's a space that I work in a lot, and we're able to make some big difference in mental health, with wellness, with longevity. And a lot of the tools that we use, when you use the tool, it really feels so much more natural and like a friend versus like a decision tree. Do you remember? I'm old, but when the decision phone trees first came out, you would press 1 and then it would say, if this, do this, and you press 2 and then you press 1. And that did not feel like a human connection, right? And now we can have an inline dialogue that feels like a human connection with you. And it's so much easier to interact that way. So
Yeah.
that part, I think, is a net benefit. And I think the real question is how do we make sure we get that net benefit with I wonder to some extent how much of the polarization is because social media has dehumanized people. And what I'm trying to say with that, maybe not so well, is that when you're on social media and you're online, you're interacting with the comment, right? And it's easy to polarize a comment. But when you and I are talking face to face, I'm interacting with a human. And so historically, if that was the main way that I learned to interact, then when you said something that I didn't agree with, I could disagree with the comment and still agree with you as a human. And I think we're getting trained more and more from having social media be our dominant means of interaction to just have comments or positions or arguments isolated away from the humans so that people are treating each other in person with less and less respect because they're less human now.
Yeah, I think you touched upon a really critical point. It's like that human connection is getting lost, and it totally makes sense on how it's working. And yeah, it's just like the algorithm, how it's working, and how, like, I've heard like these experts, like neuroscientists, are behind the scenes helping like these algorithms work, and then sure will provide you with that information that will be relevant to you and that will keep you engaged. So it's just like working on that matter. And as you mentioned, the other, maybe on the um, a silver lining I find from this portion is probably from a human connection might work not in the best way, but for, let's say, research, for some of that, let's say, care, as you mentioned, like you have someone to interact with 24/7. I know we all have to have some downtime and emergency places. There's always someone, but let's say for specific things that might be valuable to have some support, some guidance, and not be probably in the middle of the night on, let's say, on my own, and I'm having, I don't know, a crisis episode. There's someone I can assist, but I know there's lots of things, components that need to be taken care of before launching an app or a tool or so. But I think there might be also certain things that will be applicable, that will provide support to us as humans, but it's having the right scope in place, and then some controls to leverage it adequately.
And for me in healthcare, one of the huge boons that I've had, and this was actually one of the products that we started and launched internally before it became its own company, is now when I see patients in the emergency department, the patient came in, but a lot of what I was doing as a healthcare provider was actually taking care of healthcare and not taking care of the patient, right? I had quality metrics, I had check boxes I had to fill out, right? There was a lot of forms and paperwork and crap I had to do to take care of healthcare that had not nothing to do with taking care of the patient, but not a whole lot. And it certainly wasn't a human connection with you if I'm like filling out these quality metric reports that I have to do as part of taking care of you. And now that we have this tool, it's called Savant, that takes care of all of that for me, and it just ambiently listens to everything and then fills all that out for me. Now, when I walk into the room to take care of you, I'm actually focused on just you, and I can actually just take care of you. And that's just made my practice of medicine so much more fulfilling and helped my wellness dramatically, because I actually didn't, I wasn't a kid and said, hey, someday I want to be a doctor so I can fill out forms, right? I actually wanted to be a doctor to take care of people. And it actually lets me interact with people again and not worry about filling out forms. And so I think there are a lot of benefits. I don't mean to sound like an AI Pollyanna, because I think AI is going to do amazing things, and I think there's incredible potential. It's just there's some risks there as well.
Yes, and totally. Maybe to support your point, I am keen on supporting AI for the sake of providing us with, like, let's say, using our skill set, our time to where we are gonna provide the most value. As you mentioned, when you're with a patient, what's the best value you can provide? Uh, Making that connection, helping them on their overall care, and there's always this admin component, operational side of things, which is needed and required. But where do you have the most value? It will be like being with your patient and providing the best health or the best care possible. And that other things that need to happen, if you have some automations, if you have AI in place, if you have technology, it can support you. And then you can have bandwidth to probably have more time for like researching what's the latest things or trends and advancements in what you're focused on. So I totally find I'm on that same track. There's some risk to it, I agree, but as long as the ones that are behind these innovations, building things, create the right framework and it's applied properly, I find there's more pros than cons to it, and it's just up for us on how we build things and how we're using them, keeping always that component of what's the purpose, how are we making sure it's not gonna get into these specific risks or so. And also it can happen, as we know, like if there's someone you have, just to give an example, you have, maybe I'm going to say a nurse just because we're talking about health wellness, but if there's a nurse that doesn't have a proper training, doesn't have certain requirements met, or and if not going, it's going through a certain or a rough time in her life or his life, maybe the care they provide or certain advice they provide at some point might not be the best one. So there's also this risk with the human interaction and the human component, that there's that uh, area for error or things that can go wrong. So it's also that way, that the lens we put into it and how we can obviously rely on it or put some precautionary measures on it too.
And I think, the point about humans are fallible, but there's a human connection is important, right? And and that, I think, especially around longevity and the human connection part, I think I think part of what longevity and wellness means to me anyway is getting back to what I as a human or the patient as a human is trying to accomplish. And so, I always think about all the people I've lectured about their poor blood sugar control, right? You have diabetes, you come in and your blood sugar is poorly controlled. So I tell you how important it is to control your blood sugar, because you live longer and you have less complications and whatever. And I think as a human, if I don't have diabetes, fortunately, if I heard that, I'd be kind of like, whatever, who cares about a number, right? And that's not really tying to what I'm trying to do. And I think some of the wellness and longevity has actually come out of a frustration that our healthcare system is really paying attention to numbers and things that don't mean anything to me as a human. But if you tell me, hey, right now, you're waking up 6 times a night to use the bathroom, to pee, and let me see if I can help you so that you can sleep through the night. Now, the way you do that is you control your blood sugar, and controlling your blood sugar actually stops that from happening. And the reason that you're peeing is because your blood sugar levels are high. And as healthcare, if we just put that back into what the person's trying to accomplish as a person, I think A, we do a better job of healthcare, and B, as a person, I'd like my healthcare a whole lot more. And I think that goes into the longevity and wellness, which I find is much more driven by what the person is trying to accomplish, right? Like, I want to be able to keep up with my grandkids. I want to look sexy in my dress or in my suit or whatever, right? Like, and those are what we're trying to accomplish. And then, the job of the longevity or the wellness or the healthcare provider is to figure out what the science-backed recommendations are that get you there. Because if you're willing to go there through, bro science and kind of fake whatever, then healthcare is not the way to do that, right? There's other snake oil salesmen you can go to.
Yeah, and I love that approach, and the overall goal you have in mind is okay, how you as a human being can become or grow, not grow, but live your best years, right? Considering like what's your goal, what do you want to do, like see your loved ones be well for them, because it's not the same going through, a rough time and illness and whatnot. But obviously, as you say, having numbers and saying like you have this disease, maybe if I don't feel ill, even though there's some levels that might not show the best situation, it might not really count if you are not having any major symptoms, let's say.
Mhm.
But if the overall goal, as you mentioned, is having this longevity in mind, wellness, then it's a different approach, and that's the way we should be looking at things. So I really like that approach you're taking.
Yeah, and what what wellness is to me is different than wellness to you, right?
Yes.
And it really needs to resonate with what I'm trying to accomplish versus what some guideline somewhere says is the goal.
Yes, that's as well totally valid. And well, various components, as I think we talked about it before, the topics we have had throughout the episodes recorded and being released, they're like really broad. There's different topics and components, but all of them have the same goal to provide information that will be valuable to take to consider for your wellness. And if maybe this resonates with someone, let's say close to me, I will be sharing it. And it's a great way just to learn to get that information, absorb it, and sometimes will be the best one that will come on the right timing. And it's like, okay, this is on point, this is for me, and I'm gonna really grow from it or become better. And the other thing that it's really important, as you mentioned, like the healthcare system, certain things that might not be well, let's say, it's that approach that I'm seeing overall with speakers I've had so far, is we are looking to, or we're having more of this proactive approach into our overall wellness, and not waiting until we fall ill, or there's like some studies and then I know I have this, I don't know, diabetes case or situation. So that's the other beauty on having a shift in the approach in the culture, and how everyone as a human being is trying to have this proactive approach on their well-being. And it's not only like the physical aspect, it's also the mental health side of things. So many things that have evolved through time. In my experience since COVID, I had more attention into that mental health piece
Mhm.
and other things. And before I was more like, okay, this is my things I have to do and cover when I'm this age, and that's it. So many things that have changed and evolved through time, and obviously experiences. But I find that's the overall goal, to do things proactively, to become or be well, feel well, and obviously live as fully as we can.
Absolutely. And I think my advice from those four different dimensions of my multidimensional mediocrity would be that to me, what's been successful and what I see others successful in terms of wellness and longevity is to start with what their goal is, start with what my goal is for my health. And I think historically, generally, if we ask someone, what's your goal for health? They'd say, don't get sick, don't die. And I think that was kind of the deficit model we were working on, where you waited till you were sick and then you did something about it. And now I think we can have hopefully better goals, right? I want to feel super energetic at 5 p.m. every day. I still want to feel energetic. And then you go from that to saying, okay, what are the ways that I can do to get there? And sometimes having, that's what our longevity centers do, our wellness centers. Sometimes having a clinician or an expert help you with that is important. Sometimes you don't need to have one. But whatever you're doing, I think it's important that you continually check in and say, okay, my goal was to do this. You know, Bob down the street told me this worked for him. I really believe in Bob, so I'm going to try it. I'd first make sure it's not dangerous. And if it's not dangerous, you try it. And then you say, did it work or not? And if it didn't, then don't hold on to it, right? Try something else. But always kind of keep checking back with what your actual goal was.
Yeah, that's great advice. And as you mentioned, obviously always checking the information you get, the sources, and validate it and test things. Sometimes what works for you won't work for me. We're in different times
Mhm.
within our lives and different situations and needs, but obviously that's a great advice that you're giving to the audience. So I really love that. And we're getting close to wrapping it up. I have these good words you mentioned, you shared that are beautiful. And we'll be sharing information below to follow you on social media and the website on what you're doing with Inflect. But feel free to wrap it up with any final thoughts.
I guess
Is there
my final thought is that my big hope for wellness AI and everything else is that, you know, the world really runs on trust, and trust is created by human connection. And my hope is that we can have technology doing more and more of the non-human stuff so we can get back to human connection.
Love it? Okay. Thanks, Josh. I appreciate your time
Thank,
here and talk to you soon.
thank you so much for having me.